I always thought we were the exception. You know the type. The mother-daughter pair that talks about everything, laughs at inside jokes, finishes each other's sentences, sends funny memes at midnight. That was me and Emma, or so I thought. She's 15 now, quick-witted, sharp-eyed, with this sarcastic smile that reminds me painfully of who I used to be before life added all the layers. She still calls me Mama when she's tired, still lets me braid her hair when she's anxious, still asks me to stay in the room when she has a headache. And until last week, I believed, truly believed, that she told me everything. That's the part that stings the most. Not the lie itself, but how effortlessly it slipped past me. It started on a Thursday evening. Nothing dramatic, no storm clouds, no gut instinct tugging at my stomach. I was just looking for my charger. My phone was dead, and mine was missing, probably buried under the couch cushions, or claimed by the mysterious portal that eats single socks and pens in this house. I walked into Emma's room, knocked lightly, and poked my head in. She wasn't there. I stepped inside, careful not to disturb the organized chaos of her space. Throw blankets half folded, water bottles on her desk, books stacked on the floor in some system only she understood. Her charger was plugged in by the bed, unused. I picked it up, and that's when it happened. Her phone, face down on the blanket, lit up with a new message. I swear I wasn't trying to snoop. I didn't touch it. I just read the preview on the screen. She doesn't know anything. I'll just say I'm at Julia's. I froze. You know that feeling when your heart skips, but not in the romantic butterflies in the stomach way. No, this was the other kind. The cold, slow dread kind. I blinked, reread the message, then sat down on the edge of her bed without meaning to. She doesn't know anything. Say I'm at Julia's. Was she talking about me? I wanted to believe it was a joke, a miscommunication. Maybe she was talking about someone else's mom. Maybe she meant something harmless. But deep down, I knew. That night, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She came home in her usual flurry of noise. Door slam. Hey, Mom! Footsteps up the stairs, music playing through her door. I stood in the kitchen, hands still wet from washing dishes, feeling like I was watching someone else's life happen in my house. My daughter, my open book, tell you everything Emma, was lying to me. Or at least, planning to. And what gutted me wasn't just the dishonesty. It was how easy it seemed for her. Like this wasn't the first time. I barely slept. My brain became a storm of questions with no answers. What was she hiding? Where was she really going? Why didn't she just tell me? Had I been too strict, too soft, too busy? I replayed every conversation we'd had in the last few weeks. The ones where she'd smiled just a little too fast. The I'm fine that felt off. The night she said she was at Julia's house, but came home with makeup smudged and smelling faintly like body spray that wasn't hers. How had I missed it? I always told myself I'd never be that mom, the one who only finds out when it's too late. I read the articles, listened to the podcasts, did the gentle parenting thing, the boundaries but openness thing, and yet, here we were. The next morning, over toast and half-drunk coffee, I watched her from across the table. She was scrolling on her phone, earbuds in, eyes darting across the screen. She smiled once, the way you do when a friend sends something only you two would understand. I wanted to reach across the table and say, "Who are you when I'm not watching?" But instead, I said, "Hey, Em?" She looked up. "Yeah? Where were you last Saturday night?" She didn't blink. "Julia's. Why?" And there it was. The lie. Smooth. Effortless. "I was just wondering," I said. She gave a small shrug and went back to scrolling. I didn't call her out. Not yet. Because I realized something. You can force the truth, but you can't force trust. And what I wanted, more than answers, was to understand why she felt the need to hide. Was it fear? Shame? Was she trying to protect me? Or herself? Later that day, I texted my best friend, Rachel, who has 3 teenagers and a zero drama tolerance policy. Me. I think Emma's lying to me. Rachel. Think or know? Me. Read a message. Not proud. Rachel. You okay? Me. Not even close. Rachel. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Don't go in swinging. Go in soft. I stared at that last line. Don't go in swinging, go in soft. I wasn't sure I knew how to do that, but I knew I had to try, because this wasn't just about one lie. It was about what that lie revealed, and what I was willing to do to reach her again, even if I had to start from scratch, even if it meant facing truths I hadn't been ready to hear. But before we dive into this thrilling story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like, so that YouTube can show you more content like this. There's a moment right before you confront someone you love where time slows down. You replay every possible outcome in your head. Maybe she'll admit everything and cry. Maybe she'll deny it and push me further away. Maybe she'll roll her eyes and laugh it off like I'm being dramatic. Maybe I'll make it worse. Maybe I already have. All day at work, I moved through tasks like a ghost. Meetings blurred together. Emails sat unread. People asked if I was okay, and I smiled that automatic, flat smile that says, I'm fine, but don't ask again. Because how do you explain this kind of heartbreak? It wasn't like catching her stealing or sneaking out or failing a class. It was more subtle, more personal. She didn't just hide something. She hid it from me. The person who packed her lunches and stayed up with her during fevers and sat through every middle school band concert, smiling through the screechy clarinet solos. The betrayal wasn't in what she did. It was in the fact that she didn't trust me enough to tell me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, watching the clock. Emma was upstairs, the muted thud of music bleeding through the floorboards. I kept waiting for the right moment, the right mood, the perfect, non-threatening way to say, I know you're lying. It never came, because there's no perfect time to tell your kid, you broke something between us, and I don't know how to fix it without breaking it more. Finally, around 10, I made 2 cups of tea, something we'd always done when we needed to talk about big stuff when she was younger. Chamomile for her, mint for me. I walked upstairs, tapped lightly on her door. Hey, I said. Got you some tea. She looked up from her desk, surprised but not suspicious. Thanks, she said, pulling out an earbud. I set the cup down and sat on the edge of her bed, my hands wrapped around my own mug like it was an anchor. I took a deep breath. You know, I said, keeping my voice even. When you were little, you used to get this look on your face when you lied. She froze, the smallest flinch. Not defensive yet, just alert. You'd tap your fingers against your leg, I continued, every time, without even realizing it. She laughed once, awkward. Well, good thing I outgrew that. I smiled softly. Maybe, but some things don't change. She shifted uncomfortably, sensing where this was going, but not knowing how deep it would cut. Emma, I said carefully, I know you haven't always been where you said you were. She opened her mouth to protest, reflex, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to yell. I'm not even here to punish you. I need to understand. Silence. She stared down at her tea, tracing the rim of the mug with her fingertip. Finally, she said, It's not a big deal, Mom. It is to me, I said gently. She sighed, heavy and defensive. I just wanted to go to a party. At Ben's house. It was supposed to be chill. I knew you wouldn't let me if I asked. And why do you think I wouldn't? I asked, genuinely curious. She shrugged. Because you worry. Because you think the worst. Because you don't trust me. I swallowed that bitter irony. I do trust you, I said. I trust the girl who has good instincts, who is kind, who usually makes smart choices. I leaned forward slightly, my voice soft but firm. But trust isn't just something I give. It's something we build. And hiding things, it breaks that. She bit her lip, blinking fast. I didn't want to lie, she said finally. I didn't want to deal with the lecture, or the million reasons why it was a bad idea. I just wanted to be normal for once. Go to a party like everyone else. I nodded slowly. I get it, I said. I do. Because honestly, I remembered that feeling. Wanting freedom without a 45-minute parental debrief. Wanting to test the edges of the world without being wrapped in bubble wrap. She wasn't evil. She wasn't wild. She was 15, and terrified of being trapped between childhood and adulthood. We sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping our tea. Finally, I said, I'm not mad. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. I'm hurt, I clarified. But I'm not mad. I love you. No party, No lie, no mistake changes that. She blinked hard, nodded. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I reached across and squeezed her hand. Just once. Just enough to say, "I'm still here." Later, lying in bed, I thought about how easy it would have been to storm into her room, armed with righteous anger and disappointment. How easy it would have been to demand answers, set punishments, build walls. But connection, real connection, costs more. It costs pride. It costs the illusion of control. It costs the fantasy that your kid will never need to stretch beyond your reach. And tonight, I'd chosen something harder. I'd chosen to stay soft, to stay open, to stay, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. The thing no one tells you about forgiveness is how heavy it is. You think forgiveness is the light thing, the relief, the letting go, but it isn't. It's the weight you choose to carry every day afterward. The decision to stay open-hearted even when you're still bleeding a little. And that's exactly where I was with Emma. After our conversation, things didn't magically snap back into place. There were no tearful hugs in the hallway, no big emotional speeches about trust and growing up. Instead, there were small, almost invisible shifts. She didn't stay holed up in her room as much. She texted me from school about little things again, a funny meme, a complaint about cafeteria food. She started mentioning names of people she hung out with, almost casually, like dangling a line to see if I would pull too hard. And I tried, not to pull, not to interrogate, not to turn every olive branch into an investigation, but it wasn't easy. Every time she laughed at a text, I wondered what it said. Every time she asked to go somewhere, my brain spiraled into risk scenarios. Was she telling the whole truth? Was I being naive? Was I doing enough to protect her without smothering her? There's this delicate dance parents of teenagers do, a dance between trusting and terrified. And some days, it felt like I was stepping all over my own feet. One afternoon, about a week later, I was folding laundry, because motherhood is basically just folding laundry until you die, when I found one of her sweatshirts in the pile. It smelled faintly like her perfume. I sat there, holding it for longer than necessary, feeling like a character in a sad movie montage. And that's when it hit me. I missed her. Not just the her who told me everything. Not just the her who needed my approval and my advice. I missed the simplicity of believing I knew her completely. I missed the certainty. And now, everything felt like guesswork. That night, Rachel called. "Okay, truth bomb," she said, skipping the greetings like she always does. "How are you really doing with Emma?" I hesitated, picking at a loose thread on my jeans. "I'm functioning," I said. Rachel snorted. "Liar," I sighed. "I don't know. Some days I think we're getting back to normal. Other days I wonder if we're just pretending." "Claire," she said gently, "normal isn't going back to how things were. She's not the same. You're not the same. Normal is building something new." I stared at the ceiling. I just hate feeling like a guest in her life. "She's 15, Rachel said. "You're supposed to feel that way. It's not rejection. It's construction. She's building her own house now, and you're still part of the foundation. You just can't be the whole house anymore." I didn't say anything, mostly because I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd start crying. Later, after Emma went to bed, I walked past her room. Her door was open, a small thing, but lately, it felt like an invitation. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, scribbling in a notebook. I lingered in the hallway, not wanting to intrude but aching to connect. And then, without looking up, she said, "You can come in, you know." I smiled, stepping inside. She kept writing for a minute, then tossed the notebook aside. "Nothing important," she said quickly. "Just stuff. Stuff's important," I said. She shrugged. I sat on the edge of the bed. "I miss you sometimes," I said quietly. "Even when you're right here." She bit her lip. "I miss me too sometimes," she said. That broke something inside me. Something I hadn't realized was still hanging on. We didn't talk much after that. We just sat there, side by side, breathing the same air. But in that moment, I realized something. Reconnection isn't loud. It's not a grand gesture. It's not fixing everything overnight. It's choosing, again and again, to stay near, even when it's awkward, even when it's uncertain, even when you're terrified you're not doing it right. It's sitting in the quiet together and letting love be enough for now. There's a cruel kind of irony in motherhood. You spend years teaching your child to walk, to speak, to think independently, only to feel gutted when they actually do it. You tell them, be brave, go explore, and then you silently beg, but don't go too far. And when they finally ask for more freedom, more trust, you realize that giving it isn't about trusting them. It's about trusting yourself, trusting that you built something strong enough to stand without you hovering over it every second. It was a Saturday morning when Emma dropped the bomb. We were at the kitchen table, me sipping coffee, her picking at a blueberry muffin, her hair still wild from sleep. She cleared her throat once, then again. Never a good sign. Hey, Mom? I looked up. Yeah? She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear, a nervous tell she hadn't outgrown. So, there's this thing, next Friday? I raised an eyebrow. Thing. She rolled her eyes but smiled. Not like a thing, just a bonfire. At Jess's house. Her parents are gonna be there. It's like this tradition, end of the year thing. I waited. I really want to go, she added quickly. And stay over. There it was. The ask. The push against the boundary. The silent challenge. Do you trust me enough? Or do you still see me as breakable? I took a slow sip of coffee, stalling. Who's all going? I asked. She rattled off names. Some I knew, some I didn't. No hesitation, no obvious lies, just the slight breathlessness of someone trying to keep their voice casual. Will there be supervision? I asked. She nodded. Jess's mom's cool. She's strict about drinking and curfew and stuff. I smiled inwardly at the word, cool, being paired with strict. Maybe there was hope for this generation after all. Are you asking because you're hoping I'll say yes? I said. Or because you've already made plans regardless? She froze for half a second, the tiniest flicker. Both, she said, trying to sound brave. And God help me, I loved her for her honesty, even when it scared me. I didn't answer right away. I needed time, not just to think, but to wrestle the fear down to something manageable. Because everything inside me screamed to say no. No to bonfires. No to teenage chaos. No to the unknown. No to the terrifying possibility that she might make a mistake too big for me to undo. But I knew that wasn't the real issue. The real issue was this. She needs to practice freedom while I'm still close enough to catch her. If I don't let her stretch her wings now, she'll either never learn to fly, or worse, she'll wait until she's far enough away that I won't be able to help if she falls. I'll think about it, I said finally. She nodded, trying to hide her relief. Thanks, Mom. And just like that, she was up and out of the room, leaving me alone with my coffee and my terror. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the back porch, bundled in a blanket, staring at the stars. I remembered when Emma was 6, terrified of the dark, how she'd sneak into my bed at midnight, whispering, "It's too big out there." I'd wrap my arms around her and say, "It's big, but you're safe. I'm right here." And now here I was, realizing the dark never stopped being big. It just stopped looking scary, and the only way she'd ever believe she could survive in it was if I let her step into it without holding her hand. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen, toast in one hand, phone in the other. "Hey," I said, voice steady, "about the bonfire." She looked up, cautious. "You can go," I said. Her whole face lit up. Not just a smile, but that full-body kind of joy you only get when you realize you're being trusted with something sacred. "But," I added, "I need the address. I want to talk to Jess's mom. And if anything feels off, you call me. No questions, no lectures, just a ride home." She nodded so fast I thought her neck might snap. "I promise," she said. And she meant it. Maybe not forever, maybe not perfectly, but she meant it in that moment. And that was enough. Later that day, Rachel called to check in. "Did you say yes?" she asked. "I did," I said. "Are you breathing into a paper bag yet?" "Not yet," I said, smiling, because the truth was, for the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt proud of Emma for asking, proud of myself for listening, proud that even in my worry, I could still choose trust over control. That night, Emma came downstairs, hugged me out of nowhere, the quick, embarrassed kind of hug teenagers give when they don't want it to be a big deal. And I held on just a second longer than she expected, because I knew this wasn't just about a party. This was about the slow, steady building of a bridge between us. One truth, one chance, one terrifying yes at a time. And if you are enjoying the story, help us out by subscribing to the channel and giving a like. The hardest part wasn't saying yes. The hardest part was what came after. The quiet, the hours crawling by, the wild, frantic stories my mind wrote on its own. Because when you love someone with your whole heart, your imagination stops being your ally. It becomes a monster. It whispers every worst-case scenario, every headline, every story you swore would never happen to your kid, and there's no amount of logic that quiets it. Only time and faith and a little bit of surrender. Friday night arrived faster than I thought it would. The universe's small mercy, I guess. Emma got ready upstairs, humming along to a playlist she didn't let me hear anymore. I hovered downstairs, pretending to clean the already clean kitchen, pretending to read a book I wasn't absorbing a single word of. At 6:45, she bounded down the stairs. Jeans, hoodie, sneakers, casual, comfortable, glowing with the kind of nervous excitement you only get when you're 15 and about to experience a tiny piece of freedom. "You look good," I said, keeping my voice light. "Thanks," she said, grabbing her bag. "Text me when you get there." "I will. And if anything feels weird, call you. No questions, no lectures." "I remember." She smiled, half teasing, half sincere. I opened the door. The night air was cool and smelled like possibility. "Be safe," I said. "Love you, Mom," she said, already halfway to the car, pulling up at the curb. And just like that, she was gone. I stood in the doorway for a long time after she left, holding onto the doorknob like it could somehow hold the rest of me together. And then the waiting began. I tried to keep busy. I loaded the dishwasher. I folded laundry. I reorganized the pantry for absolutely no reason. I texted Rachel. Me. How do people survive this stage? Rachel. Wine. Deep breaths. Netflix. In that order. I laughed. A real, small laugh, but still didn't open a bottle. Didn't turn on the TV. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, checking my phone every 5 minutes, even though I knew she would text when she arrived. 7:10. 7:20. 7:26. Finally. Emma. Here. Everything's cool. Love you. 3 short sentences, but they wrapped around my heart like a lifeline. And then, silence. Hours of it. I tried not to spiral. I reminded myself, no news is good news. You gave her the tools. You gave her the words to call if she needed you. Trust her. Trust yourself. But it was like standing at the edge of a cliff, blindfolded, willing yourself to believe the ground wouldn't give way. Around 10:45, my phone buzzed again. Emma. Gonna sleep soon. Jess's mom said goodnight like 3 times already, lol. Everything's fine. Love you. I exhaled, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for hours. And for the first time all night, I allowed myself to relax. Not because the fear disappeared, but because love, real love, doesn't eliminate fear. It just teaches you to love bigger than your fear. The next morning, I woke up early. I heard her moving around upstairs, the familiar sound of her getting a glass of water, brushing her teeth, laughing at something on her phone. Normal, ordinary, beautifully uneventful. When she came home around 9 a.m., she dropped her bag by the door and immediately flopped onto the couch. "Morning," I said. She grinned. "Morning, Mom." And then, without being asked, she started talking. About the bonfire. About Jess's weird neighbor who yelled at them for laughing too loud. About how bad the store-bought s'mores kits were. About how Jess's mom made them all hand over their phones at midnight so they'd actually sleep. No defensiveness. No walls. Just her, chattering like she used to when she was little, bubbling over with the need to share her world. And as I listened, something shifted inside me. Not a dramatic earthquake, just a small, powerful click. The realization that this ordinary Saturday morning, this easy conversation, this trust handed back piece by piece, this is what building looks like. It's not grand. It's not instant. It's small moments, stitched together by patience and presence and terrifying faith. Later, she fell asleep on the couch, curled up like she hadn't done since she was 10. I covered her with a blanket, brushing a piece of hair from her forehead, and I whispered, more for myself than for her, I trust you. I trust us. I'm still learning, but I'm here. I thought the hardest part would be saying yes. Turns out, the hardest part was staying soft after the yes, because fear doesn't just pack its bags and leave after one good night. It lingers. It shapeshifts. It finds new ways to ask, are you sure? The weekend after the bonfire passed peacefully. Emma was lighter, somehow, less guarded. We talked more, laughed more. I caught glimpses of the little girl she used to be, and flashes of the woman she was becoming. It felt like breathing after weeks underwater, but somewhere deep inside, the tension still buzzed. A tiny, persistent voice. Don't get too comfortable. Don't let your guard down. Because what if the trust we were building was fragile? What if one mistake could crack it all open again? That fear was tested sooner than I expected. It was a Tuesday night. Emma was supposed to be home by 9 Uda after a study session at the library. By 9:15, she wasn't back. No text. No call. At first, I stayed calm. Traffic, maybe. Lost track of time, maybe. By 9:30, the calm cracked. By 9:40, I was pacing the kitchen, clutching my phone like a life preserver. I texted, me. Hey, everything okay? ETA? No answer. I called, straight to voicemail. That familiar surge of panic flooded my chest, hot and fast and vicious. Had I been too trusting? Had I missed the signs again? Was I stupid to think that one good night meant everything had changed? At 9:57, the front door swung open. Emma stumbled in, cheeks flushed, hair messy from the wind, laughing breathlessly. I'm so sorry, she gasped, tossing her bag onto the floor. My phone died and we lost track of time, and Rachel's mom ended up giving us a ride, and I didn't know how late it was, and she stopped when she saw my face, and something changed in hers. The laugh died. The apology sharpened. The realization landed. You were scared, she said quietly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Yeah, I said. I was. We stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken things hanging between us. I wanted to yell. I wanted to cry. I wanted to say, how could you forget how much I love you? But instead, I breathed and remembered the promise I made to myself. Don't go in swinging. Go in soft. I'm not mad, I said. Her eyes widened. I'm just scared, I continued, because you're my person. And when I don't know where you are, it feels like the whole world tilts off its axis. Tears welled up in her eyes. And suddenly, she wasn't 15 and fierce and independent. She was just my girl, still learning how much space she could take without losing the ones who loved her most. I didn't mean to, she said, voice cracking. I wasn't trying to break trust. I just forgot. I know, I said, because sometimes forgetting is its own kind of rebellion, not a malicious one, just human. We sat down at the kitchen table, side by side. She told me about the study session, the group project drama, the way time dissolved when she wasn't paying attention, and I listened, not to judge, not to trap her, just to hear her. Later, after she went upstairs, I stayed behind, staring at the empty mug of tea in front of me, and I realized something important. Building trust isn't about eliminating mistakes. It's about surviving them, together. It's not about never getting scared. It's about what you do with the fear when it comes. And tonight, we chose to stay, to sit in it, to believe the best even when our instincts wanted to armor up. I grabbed my phone and texted Rachel. Me. She was late. Phone died. Panic attack. 8:10. Rachel. And me. And I didn't yell. Rachel. That's parenting at level, final boss. I'm proud of you. I smiled, feeling a little stronger. Not because everything was perfect, but because we were still trying, still loving, still learning, one late night at a time. There's a loneliness to parenting no one talks about, not when they're babies, when loneliness means sleep deprivation and adult conversations reduced to weather and diaper blowouts, not even in the early school years, when loneliness is missing them during the day but still hearing everything that happened by bedtime. No, the real loneliness comes later, when they start living parts of their life without you, when they build whole worlds you don't get to see, and you realize you're no longer the narrator of their story, you're just an occasional guest. It hit me hardest the following weekend. Emma had plans again. A group movie night, this time. Not sketchy, not rebellious, just normal teenager stuff. She asked permission, told me the truth, texted when she got there. By all accounts, it should have felt like a win. And yet, when she walked out the door, laughing with her friends, leaving a trail of perfume and excitement in her wake, I felt it, that aching, silent tug of separation. I tried to shake it off. I cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, started a documentary I knew I wouldn't finish. But the feeling stuck. It wasn't fear this time. It was something quieter. Sadness, maybe. The grief of realizing that no matter how close we were, there would always be parts of her life I wouldn't be invited into. Secrets whispered between friends. Inside jokes I wouldn't understand. Fears and hopes she would sort out on her own before bringing them to me, if she brought them at all. And I didn't know if I was ready for that. Later that night, she came home just before curfew. I heard the door open and close softly. No slamming, no drama, just the ordinary sound of a teenager coming home. I stayed on the couch, pretending to be asleep, but my heart lifted when she tiptoed into the room and whispered, "Night, Mom." I whispered back, "Night, sweetheart." And that was it. Not a full debrief, not a detailed play-by-play of every moment. Just presence, just enough. After she went upstairs, I sat there for a while longer, thinking about all the versions of Emma I had loved. The toddler who clung to my leg, the grade schooler who asked 100 questions before breakfast, the middle schooler who cried over friendship drama and science projects gone wrong, and now, this Emma, independent, mysterious, messy in ways I couldn't fully fix, but still mine, not because I held her close, but because I learned to let her be far. The next morning, over pancakes, I asked her casually, "Good time last night?" She nodded, mouth full of syrupy goodness. "Yeah, it was fun. Lame movie, though." "Yeah? What was it?" She groaned. "Some horror thing. Totally fake. I mean, if you're gonna make a ghost movie, at least make it believable, right?" I laughed, because even in her distance, she was still her. Still the girl who needed logic in her stories. Still the girl who wanted to be scared, but only safely. "Maybe you should write a better one," I teased. She grinned. "Maybe I will." It wasn't the deep, soul-bearing conversation I used to crave. It wasn't pages and pages of her innermost thoughts. It was just this. A few shared minutes. A few glimpses of her real self. And I realized something. She doesn't owe me access to everything. She only owes me her honesty, her effort, and her presence. And those things, those small, imperfect gifts, were more than enough. Later that day, I wrote in my journal, "Parenting teenagers is like trying to catch sunlight in your hands. You can't. All you can do is feel its warmth while it's there, and trust that it's still shining even when you can't hold it." And when Emma passed by me that afternoon, phone in one hand, snack in the other, she paused. Out of nowhere, she hugged me. Quick, casual, but real. And for once, I didn't try to hold on too tight. I just hugged her back, let go, and smiled. Because sometimes love is not about holding tighter. Sometimes it's about letting them know they can leave, and trusting they'll come back. Some stories don't end with a bang. They end with something smaller, a quiet shift, a softening, a decision made in silence. That's what happened with me and Emma. We didn't have a movie moment, standing in the rain, crying, declaring that we understood each other now. We just kept showing up, kept learning how to be close in new ways, kept fumbling through the weird, messy middle of growing up and letting go. And somewhere along the way, something beautiful happened. It was a random Thursday afternoon when it hit me. I was working from home, half listening to a Zoom meeting, when Emma burst into the kitchen, hair wild, backpack sliding off one shoulder, talking a mile a minute. "You will not believe what happened today," she said, breathless. I muted myself instantly. "Tell me." And she did. About a weird project at school, about a teacher who forgot their own assignment, about a boy who made her laugh so hard she cried. And I realized, as she spoke, that this was trust, not surveillance, not prying, not demanding access to her world. Trust was her choosing to walk back into my orbit when she didn't have to. Later that night, I sat outside on the porch, bundled in a blanket, sipping tea. Emma joined me, unprompted, sliding into the chair next to mine. For a while, We just sat there, watching the stars. No pressure, no big conversation starter. Just quiet, just being. She kicked at a loose rock with her sneaker and said, "Hey, Mom? Yeah, I'm glad you didn't freak out. You know, when you found out about the stuff I hid." I smiled in the dark. "It wasn't easy," I said honestly. "I know," she said, "but it made me want to tell you stuff again, because you didn't make it about you. You didn't make it scary." I blinked fast, trying not to cry. "I'm proud of you, Emma," I said. "Not because you're perfect, but because you're brave enough to be honest, even when it's messy." She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head lightly against my shoulder for a second. A brief, almost embarrassed gesture, but it meant everything. Because connection isn't in the grand declarations. It's in the small moments when they choose you, even when they don't have to. Before going to bed that night, I opened my notes app and wrote, "She is her own story now. I am just lucky enough to be a chapter she chooses to keep. I can't protect her from every heartbreak, every mistake, every night she forgets to text, but I can be her safe place to land. I can love her enough to let her become whoever she's meant to be, even if parts of her journey happen without me watching." And for the first time in months, I slept without fear curling itself around my heart. Because parenting teenagers, loving them for real, isn't about holding tighter. It's about standing back, arms open wide, heart vulnerable, whispering, "You can always come home," and trusting that they will. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. We'd also love it if you left a comment telling us which city you're listening from and whether you identified with this mother in any way. Have you ever gone through something similar to this story? If you can, share it with another mother who might be needing this dose of affection and hope. You are very important to us, and we thank you for being part of this community of reflection and love. Thank you so much, and see you next time. And see